It's my pleasure to introduce Sue Mueller, the genealogy SIG organizer for the computer users of Erie. She is a retired educator and administrator. She is a member of the computer users of Erie, and that's in Pennsylvania. She lives in Girard, Pennsylvania for 48 years and has been working seriously on genealogy for more than 25 years. And she's used Family Tree Maker since 1966, and she was a beta tester starting in 2012. She teaches monthly genealogy classes for the Erie County Public Library. Today, Sue's presentation is on finding and using historical newspapers. Newspapers record not just basic details on your relatives, but also stories about their lives and information important to their communities. Sue will help you understand digitized collections and locate free newspaper sources online. Learn how to search and what you can find. I'll now turn things over to Sue.
Okay, the old newspapers can be very rich with family lore, and there are lots of them that you will find online for free. So I'm going to talk about just what you're going to find, how things are digitized, and limitations of the accuracy of primary sources, how you can find current obituaries and Social Security death index records, books in and out of copyright, and then a workaround if you're too cheap to subscribe to something and the obituary you want is only in a paid collection. Just for your information, the laws regarding records, the only thing really that's covered by law is the census records, and they're kept, they don't become public for 72 years. The generally accepted genealogical standard for birth certificates is 105 years. That can vary. There's no law that says that, but that's a generally accepted standard. Death certificates, 50 years. Marriage licenses and wills, you can go down to the courthouse and look at those. As soon as a will is offered for probate, you can go down and look, just if you're a nosy Nelly. Newspapers, there's no hiding. Anything after 1925 is still in copyright, so they may be protected by that. And that's the same thing with family history books, which would be in copyright up through 1924. In order for you to be able to search, use Control F or on your computer, something has to have been scanned as a PDF using OCR software. All that means is optical character recognition, and the copy has to be clear. So the search function will only be good as the copy, and some old records are, the quality is not good. I will also point out to you that sometimes you're going to run into Google eBooks that have been scanned as images and you can't search them. So if you're sure something is in something that you're looking at, look at a page you can see, search for something on that page, and if it says it's not found, then you know you're wasting your time to search. So most of these newspapers have been digitized by machine, so, as I mentioned, so the quality of the search function is going to determine whether you can actually find something. So be creative with your searching. Don't be too specific. If you have a surname that's Bridge or House, I'm sorry, you're going to find a whole lot of things you don't like. But if there was an unusual first name, search by that. Add a keyword if that's appropriate. Anything you put in quotes is going to only glean what's actually in the quotes. So I don't usually encourage you to use quotes. Be creative with your searching. If you're just using Mr. Google to search, you'd be amazed at how many people do not have their family trees or their research on your traditional MyHeritage or Ancestry sites, and they may just have a family page, or there may be somebody who loves a certain area and has posted a whole lot of material from a certain county or a certain part of the county, and you may find records that way. library, definitely your friend, either where your ancestors settled or at home. Your own library may have some resources for card holders only. Most libraries subscribe to HERITAGEQUEST, which is rich with genealogy material, and that's for free, and it's something you can access at home online with just your library card number. Sometimes libraries have resources that anybody can access. You don't have to be a card holder. For instance, my Erie library has an obituary index, which can be very helpful. On site, most libraries have regional microfilmed newspapers. Sometimes they have local indexes. So call library, ask what they have, go on their website, see what they have. The handout includes how you can find libraries all over the United States. We have a local library in Union City that has a cemetery index. I've seen some of them have marriage indexes. So I can't tell you everybody has one thing, but check the library site and see what their genealogical resources are. Regional and historical genealogy societies may offer resources online. They may also offer resources that they're selling. And they may also help you out with the searches. They may have the newspapers that they can access and look up things for you. Also, if you're using an index for an online search with a library, start with the surname only. For instance, I mentioned that we have an obituary index for our local library. You can pick up married names when you search the surname only, because generally it has, Ethel Jones Smith has her whole name in the obituary index. Sometimes it even has, if she was married 2 or 3 times, it has all those names. Don't restrict your search with a date, because you're looking for brothers and sisters, cousins, whatever, family members that you may not have known about. Some libraries have an on-site genealogist. We have a local library in the next county where their genealogy room is only open when there's a volunteer genealogist in the room. That's not usually the case. Our library rotates their library workers in and out on 2-hour shifts in that room, in their genealogy room. So sometimes you get somebody who hardly knows how to turn on the microfilm machines, and sometimes you get somebody that knows what she's talking about. I mentioned archive.org because it has out of copyright materials, and that includes a lot of family history books or county history books. They were very popular at the end of the 1800s and in the early 1900s. And you can usually download the full text as a PDF, and then you can search it at your leisure. All of the New York State birth, marriage, and death indexes are on archive.org. So what you'll find there, it is a very broad spectrum of goodies. That's what the page looks like. And I mentioned about the New York State. They're all there. And once again, I guarantee the page you're looking for, the copy's going to be hard. You'll hardly be able to read it or search it, but they are in alphabetical order. So that makes, your search easy enough to do. They're by year and then in alpha order. I mentioned HERITAGEQUEST before. I don't know a library that doesn't subscribe to HERITAGEQUEST. So if you have a library card from somewhere, you can access HERITAGEQUEST. They have books in copyright online. It's owned now by Ancestry. They have some books that are still in copyright, and you can download a page at a time. So you could download, the index and then look at the index and see what you wanted to find in them. And the nice thing about HERITAGEQUEST is they do have census records there. And if you don't subscribe to Ancestry, they use the Ancestry Index, which is probably the best index for censuses, because Ancestry allows you to suggest if something's been indexed incorrectly. So, and then that is included in the index too. So that's the only thing that makes their index superior to anybody else's. So I mentioned at the outset that there's all kinds of stories in the old newspapers. I feel sad that those kinds of newspapers are gone. The birth announcements can be very rich. They often name who the parents are, who the grandparents are. And then if the kid has a first birthday, everybody who attends, and usually with a relationship. If a kid graduates from high school, the information will be in there. And it'll say, you know, he's the grandchild of, if it's a local person. When people joined the military, World War I, World War II, they had that information in there. In fact, they even listed the people who were drafted. There would be a long list. When the young men or women wrote letters home during the war, often those were included in the newspaper. So you can find all kinds of things in the old newspapers. You know, little gossip columns of who's dating whom, or somebody fell at a dance. And when somebody was married, you know, they even included what the dress looked like, or if grandma made the dress, or it was, you know, those kinds of things. If somebody had a 50th wedding anniversary, that information will be in there, and often who was in the wedding with them. When you're looking for something, don't restrict yourself to the date, because a lot of these newspapers had a little column that was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, or whatever, and then they'll recall something that was in a former newspaper, which then can help you go get that newspaper. But that newspaper being older, the quality of the search function might not be as good as the more current ones. When you look at newspapers from the 80s and the 90s, I mean, they're clear as a bell. They're really easy to read. The old newspapers are not. And another difficulty with the oldest newspapers is they had no pictures. So even for you to scan a page to look at yourself, if you're looking for something, is very difficult. I'm using a 27-inch monitor. What I do if I'm going to spend an afternoon looking at newspapers is I flip my monitor 90 degrees, and I can see I can blow up the newspaper pretty good size, and I can see a whole page at a time, instead of, you know, having to move around the newspaper. So I recommend that you're going to do that. In fact, I've been to libraries where they have the newspapers on microfilm that actually have their monitors turned that way, which is what gave me the idea to do it myself at home. Death notices, there can be all kinds of good stuff there, because they've got the date of the death, where he died, burial information, sometimes even the cause of death. I mean, back in the 30s, if somebody committed suicide, the gory details were all included in the obituary. I finally found an obituary for my great-great-grandfather, who was hit by a train in 1909. It was probably about 8 column inches long, which is a pretty good size. I think I'm going to get a lot of information. Except for the last paragraph, it was all details about the blood and gore on the tracks. And the very last paragraph says, he leaves a wife and a couple of children. So thank you very much for that information. It was lousy obituary. Let me warn you, though, about informations on death certificates and obituaries. Except for the death, there's no guarantee that anything is correct. People are upset when they give the information. They may not even know the information. They're not going to admit that they don't know it. They will make it up. And it just wasn't that important for people to remember what year they were born in, or for their parents to tell them. I mean, I know you were there when you were born, but there's no guarantee that you remember what year that was. So it's not unusual for that birth information to be incorrect, and death certificates too. My great grandfather, on his marriage certificate, who was married in the late 1800s, when it asked for his birth date, wrote "don't know." Every vital record that I could find said that he was born in 1860. I know that that's incorrect because I have the census, and the census was taken on September 3rd, 1860. His birthday was September 17th, and he's listed as 1 year old. So he was actually born in 59, even though the tombstone, the death certificate, and other obituaries, everything says 1860. So don't restrict your search to just the local newspaper, because if your ancestor was important enough, his obituary may be in the surrounding area newspaper. And if he was really a person of importance, you know, say a minister or political figure, it may be in a much larger area than that. Begin searching before the estimated death date, because it may list how he's taken to his bed and he's sick. They generally had little newsy columns where people had the local gossip or who was visiting or whatever. And if kids came before he passed, they would have, you know, have so-and-so is visiting because their father is ill, that kind of stuff. So you may get information. Then afterwards, there may be funeral articles, which will include the pallbearers, and you can try and then figure out what the relationship might have been to your ancestor. It'll give you a church affiliation, which will then help you find church records, birth, marriage, whatever. And there will be thank you notes for people who have helped out for the funeral, and then legal notes, you know, when the estate's being solved. So don't stop your search with, you know, the week after death. If some of the people who would be inheriting the estate, whether there was a will or not, are not of at the age of majority, an estate can go on for the actual closing for years. And then look for the date of the spouse and siblings too for more information. And you can often get a gal's maiden name from an obituary just by seeing what her brother's last names are. It won't necessarily have her maiden name in the obituary, but you can figure it out. So that can be very helpful too. Okay, I mentioned that the obituary is usually provided by the survivors. I don't know about you, but the funeral director here is actually a friend, but I have given him the information for my death certificate. And I've also written my own obituary. Of course, the kids will probably change it when I pass, but I grew up in New Jersey. My kids never knew their grandparents living in New Jersey because they retired to Pennsylvania. They know I was born in New Jersey, but I would say that they could not tell you the name of the town, nor could they tell you where I went to high school, because they just had no relationship with New Jersey at all. I never had any siblings who lived in New Jersey or grandparents or whatever. And I mentioned how the information can be not correct. And I just show you this because this is my grandmother's obituary, but this is what I did. I put the correct information in brackets, and then when I have it in my records, I have the actual obituary, and then I have the corrected version. My uncle gave this information, and he had no idea, but you know, some of it was close. I just want to show you this because this is from an 1879 newspaper. This woman came from a family of importance, which is why she had a decent obituary here. But she had 12 children, and I got the names of all of the kids and their married names from that. I mean, it was a gold mine. I was just so thrilled to find something like that for a woman, number one, but from an 1879 newspaper. And I got this information from the history of Armstrong County, and I was intrigued by the two children that were killed by lightning in this article. And you see the last name, the surname is Schreckengast. Well, if you're not familiar with that name, you can see that spelled so many ways. And now I'm looking in old newspapers that might not be clear anyway. And I couldn't find it. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to look for the event itself, because the event was unique. You know, people killed by lightning. So lo and behold, when I searched for lightning strike, I did find the information. Notice it didn't have the names of the brothers or the first names of them. So I, would have been wasting my time trying to find them. And it was near Rural Valley, not Rural Village, but it was actually in the next county newspaper that I found this. I didn't find it in the Katanning newspaper, which is the newspaper from Armstrong County. So if somebody died in an accident or some kind of unique situation, for instance, I was looking for somebody who died in a car accident in 1939. It was unique to be killed by a car in 1939. Wouldn't be today, but I did a search and I actually found it. It occurred in Ohio, but I found it in all kinds of Ohio papers, but not the paper close to the person I was looking for. So where you have a unique situation of an accident, search for the accident itself rather than a name, and you might get information. If you're looking for current newspapers, man, they want you to pay or subscribe, so you may not be able to find what you want for free. Today's paper you can probably look at, but if you want to look at something old, you might have a little bit more problem. Current obituaries can be found on legacy.com. They started in 2000 and go up to present day, but let me give a caveat for that, because the Gannett people, the USA Today people, own 454 newspapers across the United States. One of them is the Erie newspaper. Effective August 1st this year, they stopped providing the obituaries for Legacy. I have to think that that was not a unique situation just for Erie. I suspect it may be USA Today newspapers, all of them, but I have not confirmed that. But let me just say that. So legacy.com has major world newspapers. It's not just the United States. It has complete recent obituaries starting in 2000. The older dates, they had been abbreviating them. I think they're not doing that so much anymore, but they always in the obituary include the name of the funeral home, because this is a cooperative venture of the funeral homes and newspapers. So you can generally go to the funeral home website, because if a funeral home has put something online, they generally do not take it off. And if you don't find it there, you can call the funeral home, and they're usually pretty good about providing you with what you're looking for and without charge. And the obituary may include a picture. This is what it looks like. Do not just search what pops up, because the default is to search the last week. So you want to do more options for your search, where you can, if you're not sure of the date, you can pick a date. In fact, if you're pretty sure you know where the newspaper is, you can restrict it by state, or by even by particular newspaper. That's good, particularly when you're looking for somebody who had a fairly common name. And if you have no life, like I do, You can actually sign up for them to notify you when a surname, yeah, obituary shows up, a certain surname. My maiden name was Bowser. I don't recommend you do a all search for Bowser. Do you know how many people had dogs named Bowser and include that information in their obituaries? Not good. So you can find there are other newspapers rather than your traditional ones. There, there were times when there were foreign language newspapers that were published where you had a large ethnic population in a certain area. So the other newspapers may have stories or obituaries that aren't included in the larger newspapers, or they may have longer obituaries. There were religious newspapers, and I know the Presbyterian newspapers actually had regional, and that may have been the Presbyterian Church divides their churches by presbyteries, and they had a newspaper for the presbytery. So if any Presbyterian died in the presbytery, that would be listed in the newspaper, in the Presbyterian newspapers. So that would give you a start of finding a date to look for something. There were also college newspapers, and a lot of those college newspapers are online now too. Where are you going to find them? Your handout has lots of goodies on it, but these are some of the places you're going to find them. If you're not familiar with Cindy's List, you should be using Cindy's List because it's like a big card catalog for anything you want to find related to genealogy. Chronicling America is the Library of Congress site, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of these sites. Cindy's List has general resources. They have how-tos. They have newspaper directories. They have anything you could think of that is organized. And like if you searched for Pennsylvania, then the organization for Pennsylvania, New York would be the same way. Everything's set up the same way. So you can get at what you want in a whole lot of different ways. When she first started with her list, it was only links to free sites. Now she includes paid sites too, but it does indicate on the link that it's a paid site. So, if you're not going to subscribe, you could not look at that. I mentioned that Chronicling America is the Library of Congress sites. It has newspapers up through, it says it has them later than that, but essentially it has those papers that are on there are all out of copyright. So through 1925. They don't make your search too restrictive, but they have an incredible search engine, probably one of the best around. And that accounts for how slowly they're digitizing all the newspapers that they want to. One of the things that Chronicling America has, which is really helpful, is they have a newspaper directory of all the newspapers that were ever printed and the dates that they were printed, and then where you can find them. So, and then what condition they are, whether they're digitized, whether they're microfilm or hard copies or whatever. So if you're trying to find a specific newspaper that you can't find online, you want to know where it is. That's the place to go to find out where you find it. And then a simple phone call to verify that they have it. This is a subscription site, but there's a lot of stuff that you can look at for free. You register as a Godfrey Scholar. Scholars must be poor because that's a free subscription. And then you can search by categories, and one of those categories is newspapers. And this will just show you, this is a screenshot to show you the kinds of things that they have that you can look at. And then you can, all those numbers are hyperlinks, and that takes you to what they have. Google has online newspapers, and you can go to that site and click by state or whatever you're looking at. One of the nice things about the Google newspapers is once you get into them is you can just page through the newspaper. If you know about when somebody died, and a lot of those old newspapers are weekly, it's not hard to search them. They're generally about 8 pages, and you'll figure out where you're going to find the obituaries. Sadly, there's not a great big column that says deaths or obituaries, and it's often included in a little column about what's going on in the world in the newspaper. So it's, as I mentioned before, because there are no pictures and limited headlines, searching the old newspapers are time consuming, but they're rich in resources. And this is just a list of what you'll find on Google. And this is just an example of where you can find more newspapers and what that looks like. You can search by county. Be aware that the county lines shifted over the years, so depending on the date where you're looking, you may not be looking in the county that your ancestor ended up living in, even though he never moved. The county lines may have moved. This is a really neat site, and as you can see, she has a note on there that she's retiring, the gal that did this site. The site's still online. I don't know if it's going to stay forever, but she says she's not updating it because she's retired. And then she offers another resource, which I also use, which is the Ancestor Hunt. But she's got all kinds of newspapers listed there. They're all broken down by states, very easy to use. This is a great site. If you're going to go to it just by memory, remember that it has the word "the" in front of it, because there's another site called ancestorhunt.com that is not rich in resources like this one is, but the person that runs this is updating it all the time. BMD links are birth, marriage, and death, if that didn't jump out at you. But newspaper photos, lots of good stuff there, broken down by how-tos and then resources, and broken down, everything broken down by states. States are now beginning to offer, Wyoming was one of the first ones I ever saw, statewide newspaper sites. And all of these states that are listed here have them. Some of them go, like Wyoming's now goes up to 1971, which of course is, that's in copyright. Some of them are only historical newspapers. New York has a couple of them, and one of them is for New York people only, and they do that by your IP address. I mean, by where you are. I suppose if you're using a VPN and you pick New York, it would show up there, but that's the only, otherwise they're open for pretty much anybody to use, and they're all free. This is the free New York State newspaper site. I really like it because I can click on the county and it lists the newspapers. I can search a specific newspaper, or I can search all the newspapers. So it's really nice. Most of the newspapers are before 1925, but some of them go up more recent. When this guy started with this site, it was pretty much New York State only, but it's now worldwide, and it's totally free. It's kind of a funky site. There is an alternate search engine, which I would use both things to search because you'll get results a little bit different. I'm going to show you an example. I was searching here. I had the words Peter Boyle and postmaster, and the postmaster was actually the son of the person I was looking for, but that's how I found it. And I found it, I found it pretty easily. It wasn't the best result, you'll notice there. I mean, it was the second category. There were some that were up higher. That wasn't what I was looking for. But I show you the second example, which is from, it's the same search, but it's from the alternate search engine, just to show you how the old copies are not so clear. You can see the name of that newspaper is the Portville Review. If I'd have been searching for the Portville Review, it wouldn't have shown up because the quality of the paper precluded my finding. So just a word to the wise on searching digitized collections. If you decide you want to invest some money into subscribing, and I will tell you that I subscribe to all of these things, you can look and see what the collection includes, whether it's something you want to subscribe to, because if it's not, you know, they don't cover the area that you are interested in, you're wasting your money. I've found something in all of them on the different times. Genealogy Bank has the Social Security Death Index on it, and that part is free. Generally, when you do a search on these, even if you're not a subscriber, though, you can see a piece of the obituary or the piece of the document that they found, and you know, you can determine whether it's something you want to see. And I'm going to show you a little workaround there shortly of how you can get from these places. Ancestry does have newspapers. You can restrict your search to just newspapers. Ancestry is a subscription site, so obviously it's not free. Recent records, sometimes you can just do a search and find an obituary. I will tell you that one time I did a search and I had a name of a husband and wife, and I put their two names on and did a search, and I found their bridal registry, which then of course gave me the date of the marriage, kind of thing. So Google is your friend. You can find all kinds of good stuff. Be creative with your searches. You may find realty transfers and get names that way. Tenacity, I guess, is what I'm trying to encourage you to do. Okay, I mentioned before that if you don't want to subscribe to a paid site and you want to get something from a paid site, social media is your friend. I recommend that you be on social media because there are all kinds of genealogy interest groups. There's a site called Random Acts of Genealogical Kindness, and if you post up that you want something from newspapers.com and you have the date and what they want, I guarantee you within an hour somebody will post it up for you for free. Got an old picture that looks terrible, somebody will fix it up for you. There's genealogy translations. Got a page of Polish you want to be able to translate, somebody will do it for you. People are very helpful, and not just because you're cheap, but you're going to find, you'll find people that aren't interested in genealogy but have family pictures. So there's all kinds of ways that can be a benefit to you. So if you're trying to find something, go on a site related to the county or the area that you're searching. Ask people for suggestions. How do you think I can find this? Or if you find an obituary that you can't access because it's on a paid site, then ask somebody to look for it for you. It's amazing how helpful people are. And that's it. Do we have questions?
I'll remind people that if you have questions, you can send them through the chat box. We do have time just for a little bit. A comment was made that college magazines and quarterlies a lot of times have information about deaths and other activities in them. So
Right. Then they're less likely, though, to be online than the newspaper, the college newspapers.
Jerry wanted to know that you mentioned earlier Fold 3. He's
Okay.
never heard of this resource. Can you briefly describe what type of information it contains?
Fold 3 is actually, it's a military, it is the military records. It used to be with an Ancestry subscription, basic one, you got a subscription to that too, and now it's only in their top tier. But I will tell you, our library subscribes to it, and you can access it online, so it's possible a library may do. But they have a lot of city directories, not as many newspapers, but they have all kinds of military records. And that is the premier military record site.